question is for both Mr. Andrew and Prabhuji. Mr. Andrew, you said you had a cosmic consciousness at the age of 16. That is a
Yes.
experience.
Yes.
But then you met the Guru later.
Yeah.
And then you had enlightenment.
Yes.
Similarly, Prabhuji had this Kundalini Jagruti. Then he met the spiritual gurus. Then there was enlightenment. So does it mean that there is a prerequisite of having some consciousness and experience before you meet Guru? Is it?
There's no prerequisite.
So it happened in your life, so I just wanted to.
Yeah, but I think you want to learn how to think about this in a very simple way. My understanding is that what's necessary is deep sincerity and vulnerability and the willingness to let go of everything right now. Vulnerability, sincerity, and the willingness to be able to let go of everything that you think you already know. Vulnerability, sincerity, and the willingness to let go of everything you think you already know. When? Now. When? Now. When? Now. When we die, physically we're not going to be able to take anything with us. So we have to be able to let go at that moment of death, isn't it true? We have to be able to let go fearlessly and with infinite faith and trust. Right? So how long does it take, and what does it take to get any individual to that point when they're ready and willing to let go unconditionally with infinite faith and trust in what the mind can never know? That's the answer to the question. So what does it take for any individual to get to that point? We don't know. But that's all it takes. That readiness and that willingness. The readiness and willingness not to know, and to be ready and willing to let go of everything and anything unconditionally with infinite faith and infinite trust. That's it. So let's keep it very simple, not make it too esoteric. Let's keep it very simple. And so we can ask ourselves these questions. We don't even need to have a guru to ask these questions. We can challenge ourselves. Am I ready? Am I ready to let go unconditionally of everything I think I know? In a context of infinite faith and infinite trust right now? If not, why not? What am I so attached to, or what am I so afraid of that would prevent me from being able to let go that deeply right now? So, my guru said, my guru's position was very radical. He said the ultimate truth is that at the level of consciousness, you're always already free. The nature of consciousness itself is perfect, timeless, formless, beginningless, and endless freedom, because timeless, formless, beginningless, and endless freedom is the nature of consciousness as it always already is, right now, and now, and now, and in every single moment. If that's true, and it is true, then it doesn't take time for that to be true, because it always is already true. The nature of consciousness is the nature of freedom itself, in every single moment, no matter what the rational mind may say or what the rational mind may think about anything. So my guru made very clear that if you think you need to do anything to be free, you're pushing away and avoiding the ultimate and absolute truth that's always the fact in every single moment, is that consciousness is always already perfectly and unconditionally free. That's the nature of consciousness as it always already is in this very moment. So what he revealed to me is the only obstacle to enlightenment is the belief that we're not already there. Is the conscious and unconscious conviction that somehow the infinite, the absolute, is not always already here. But what we discover when we begin to awaken is that the nature of consciousness is always already timeless, formless, beginningless, and endless, and perfectly liberated in every single moment. That's its true nature. It's your true nature, it's my true nature, it's our true nature in every single moment. So the thought that it's not the case is ultimately the only obstacle to the direct realization of our own unconditional freedom in every moment. So when I described the experience I had before, that my true nature and your true nature is like water that's freely flowing, ever unobstructed, that's the nature of the true self. That's our self-nature, and it's always already the case. So the belief that the rational egoic conviction that that's not the case is the only thing in the way for any one of us. And in my own case, That's all I had to let go of, was the belief that it wasn't always already the case. So how we can find out where we stand in our own faith, in our own potential for liberation, is to ask ourselves, in the quietness of our own mind, and am I ready to let go of everything I think I know, unconditionally, right now, as if this was a moment of death? And if there's a resistance, if we're not ready to let go, we have to say, well, why not? And that's the issue. So sometimes entering into the whole field of spiritual practice and spiritual sadhana, which is all very important, and I do believe part of preparing ourselves to let go, anybody can let go of the maze, anybody can get lost in the maze of infinite sadhana, which says we have to get to this point, and then get to this point, and then get to... And relatively speaking, it's true, but from an absolute point of view, it's not necessarily true, and it all depends how ready we are at the level of the soul to let go. That's really all it's only about. The level of the soul, are we ready to let go? So for example, my guru said to me, a few months after I left him, I went back to see him, and when I walked in the room, he said to me, "I'm so glad you found a friend you'll never be able to see." He said, "I'm so glad you found a friend you'll never be able to see." He said, "I'm so glad you found a friend you'll never be able to see." So if my best friend is someone I'll never be able to see, and that best friend is who I have to rely on for everything, what does that mean? It means I have to be willing, I have to be ready and willing to not always already know beforehand, which means trust in what the mind can never, what the rational mind can never know. That's liberation. Is getting to the point when we are able to trust unconditionally in that which the rational mind can never know. So my self-confidence, or what I call spiritual self-confidence, comes only from that. Knowing that I don't need to always already know from the perspective of my rational mind and ego. And resting in that knowledge and resting in that confidence is what gives me the access to the unconditioned freedom of the self. That's it. There's nothing more to it. So when we get into the maze of sadhana, which is necessary and important at certain stages, the potential for liberation is always available to any of us if we're ready to let go. But you know what's very interesting is sometimes when people when they meet a guru or they're in the midst of their own sadhana, this opening happens, they go, the infinite suddenly reveals itself to them, and then the people withdraw in terror. They go, it's too big. And I said, what did you expect? And they said, I don't know what I expected, but it's too big. I said, what did you expect? So it's the real thing is always too much for the rational mind and ego. The real thing is way too much. So, what do we have to do to prepare ourselves for that which is always way too much for the rational mind and ego? And then we have to do whatever we have to do. Whatever we need to do is what we have to do. But ultimately, we have to be willing to let go unconditionally to that which is always going to be too much for the rational mind and ego.